Hi, good evening, everyone. Let's get started, if we may, with tonight's meeting of the Cabinet on Wednesday, the 16th of September, a meeting that's been held in public. For those that don't know me, my name is Councillor Paul Foster, and I'm the Leader of the Council and the Chair of the Cabinet. Councillor Mick Titherington is the Vice Chair and Deputy Leader. Also present are a number of officers. I'd like to mention specifically Claire Gornall tonight, and welcome you, Claire, who's now the new Democratic Services Officer supporting the Cabinet moving forward, so welcome. If I may, I'm just going to read out this script for this hybrid meeting. Please note that this is an audio and video meeting. It is being recorded, and the stream will also be live on YouTube until we move on to the exempt reports. The web address for this is displayed on the agenda of the meeting and can be found on the Council's website. The YouTube stream will end when we go into part 2 of the agenda. However, the meeting will still be recorded and can be provided to any member not on Cabinet who requires it. Members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. If you do not mute yourself, the moderator will do this for you. However, when you wish to speak, you'll need to turn on your microphone. Members and officers present in the Shield Room are also asked to ensure that they keep everything on mute unless they are speaking, and to mute themselves afterwards in order to avoid any feedback. Reports will be presented by the relevant portfolio holder, after which I will bring the item into Cabinet. If any member of the Cabinet wishes to speak on a report, you should unmute your microphone and please say your name and use and raise your hand feature, or use the chat function in the top right hand corner to notify the moderator that you do wish to speak. I will invite you in order. After Cabinet has considered the reports, I will bring in any members not on committee who wish to ask a relevant question on the specific agenda item. We request that questions are concise and pertinent. Any written representations from members of the public will be read out at the appropriate point. If the technology does fail, then we will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve. However, I don't feel that this is actually relevant tonight because all members of the Cabinet are present in the Civic Centre. That's the introduction, so welcome everybody. We'll move straight on, if we may, to the main agenda item, and any apologies for absence. Well, it looks like we're all here, so there are no apologies for absence. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? Good. Moving on, agenda item 3, the minutes of the last meeting. Are members of the Cabinet satisfied with the minutes of the last meeting, and may I sign them as a true and accurate record?
Moved, yeah.
Thank you. Any comments from anyone on the minutes? Any comments from any member not on committee? Okay, there it is. Agenda item 4, the Cabinet Forward Plan. Are there any questions from members of the Cabinet on the Cabinet Forward Plan as presented? What you will notice is there is quite a bit of business building up over the next 2 to 3 months for us to get through. But are there any specific questions, points? No? Anyone? Damien? Sorry, Councillor Brotherton?
Yeah, I was just querying the monies allocated to the playgrounds. In previous forward plans, there was £30,000 to the Bellis Way playground, but now it's been reduced to £20,000. I'm just wondering if we could have an explanation whether the £10,000 has gone. It's actually mentioned on page 22, but the actual figure of £20,000 is on page 215 towards the back.
Damien, that's I'm not sure that's absolutely relevant to the forward plan, to be honest with you, because the forward plan shouldn't be stating what budgets are specifically anyway. Yeah. But I don't know, Gary?
No, I'm just kind of looking for what page 20 what this? All right, yeah. No,
Sorry, we could perhaps pick it up in the update on capital programme. That might be the best place to pick it up. Yeah, it's the item. It's the budget monitoring item.
But do remind us, Damien, we will pick it up. Yeah. Any other points on the Cabinet Forward plan? Okay, good. Then moving on to, excuse me, agenda item 5, urgent decisions taken due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Members will note that as a standing agenda item now, we publish all the urgent decisions that have been made. And on page 30 of the agenda pack, they're laid out. Members will have had sight of all these anyway, as they are published. So I've got nothing further to add. Anybody, any members of the Cabinet got any points to raise? No, anyone not on committee? Okay, we're just asked to note that report. Moving on, agenda item 6, the Q1 quarterly performance monitoring report 2020-2021. This report presents the performance for Q1, April to June 2020, based on the progress of key projects and performance measures outlined within the current corporate plan. During Q1, the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown continued to have a significant and sustained impact on all residents, businesses and communities. The Council mobilised a highly effective and proactive response to protect all aspects of the borough. A summary of activity is included at Appendix 2. The COVID-19 community response was the operational and financial priority throughout the quarter. However, despite this, performance of the corporate plan has been maintained and remains positive, with 85% of projects currently on track, exceeding expectations or complete. Clearly, the intelligence and experience gained through the COVID response will shape the approach to service delivery moving forward through the refresh of the corporate strategy and priorities, which is presented to Council for approval later this month. We now have an understanding of the areas of vulnerability and how we can best support residents and communities to increase overall resilience. 6 projects have been paused for review pending the refresh, and to ensure that activity and resource is directed to meeting the needs of residents through the recovery phase. And all these projects are identified in Appendix 1. Of the remaining 40 projects and activities, 85% are performing well. So to summarise, clearly this was fully when COVID hit the local community, and I am particularly pleased at the performance of the authority during Q1. I think it's tremendous, and Gary, I think you should please thank for us, the officers, for their continued efforts. It was quite clearly one of the most challenging periods I think this council will ever face. From that, there's a lot of lessons that we've learned, and still an awful lot of work that we're still doing to recover, and some would argue that we're only just entering the beginning of this pandemic, the end of the beginning of this pandemic, and the recovery phase hasn't even commenced yet. There's a lot of detail within the monitoring report, and it was looked at by the Scrutiny Committee on Monday. On the supplementary agenda that was provided to you all, the recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee are as follows. There were 6 of them. The panel thanks the Leader and Chief Executive for their report and answering the questions. 2, the panel looks forward to receiving a copy of the benefits realisation plans once complete. 3, the panel welcomed the strategic review of council assets and the reassurance that the resources and skills are now in place. 4, the panel requests that the evaluation of active streets and any details of any further rollout be provided to members. 5, information on progress in respect to the Leyland Loop be provided to members of the panel. And finally, the panel commended the Council's approach to supporting residents during the pandemic and the reassurance that the Council will continue to support residents. So my first question of my Cabinet colleagues is, are we happy to accept the recommendations in full from the Scrutiny Committee, as we always do? Yep. Okay, that's agreed. Have any members of the Cabinet got any particular questions they wish to ask or points they wish to raise about the Q1 performance? No? Any members not on committee? Was there somebody that was... Councillor Michael Green.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. You're quite right. We said that Q1 was a very challenging period for South Ribble Borough Council and indeed for local authorities up and down the country. And I'd just like to place on my record my thanks to all the officers at South Ribble for the efforts they've been doing to continue to provide services to the residents of South Ribble. Could I just comment on one point, if I may, please, Chairman? On page 41, the Council is off track with regard to member development, and in particular moving towards the charter from North West Employers Organisation. The point is made that obviously due to COVID, it's not been possible to carry out a lot of the training, the face-to-face training, and indeed personal development review meetings. However, the very fact that we're using technology this evening, the Council has invested heavily in technology, including iPad Pros, which are probably one of the most expensive devices that you can probably buy on the market. But that gives us the opportunity to carry out more training and sure to carry out some of these personal development review meetings using this technology as well, as we are meeting this evening, and as people up and down the country are making multi-million-pound decisions using technology of this nature. So could I ask the Council and the Cabinet to look at bringing that forward and doing more using online training as a means of moving forward? Obviously, as you referred to, we don't know where we're up to in terms of the pandemic. It may become worse again, sadly, before it gets better. So we're here for the long run, I'm afraid to say. So we need to obviously continue to move forward as a Council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Does the Monitoring Officer want to say something? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Yeah, I think the report does go on to mention that we are investigating the use of technology to engage with councillors more. It's more a case of delaying progress of it rather than stopping progress of it. So we are looking at software packages that will help improve online training facilities for members as well. So it is something we'll take on board. Your comments are welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Michael, there is the officers as we speak are currently trying to arrange the hybrid meeting of the member development steering group as quickly as possible. So I anticipate that will happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So Councillor Mrs Green and co will be contacting you very quickly. Any other questions? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is, first of all, I'd like to thank all the officers for all their hard work. Well, my question is on page 51. It's about activities and events for people of all ages and the MH2K projects, which have both been closed. I can understand perhaps why the activities and events for people of all ages might have been closed due to the COVID, but why, in this, especially in this time when young people might be suffering from, you know, more mental health problems or feeling more vulnerable, why this was closed? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the project, Karen, was to do the piece of work. So the piece of work is closed. The actions that fall from it are still relevant and still ongoing. Yeah, we can provide an update on progress here, certainly. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Clark.
Can I just query something on page 39? It's the Green Links project, and it says due to furlough there have been delays. Do I assume from that that it's furlough of contractors that we employ, and the rest of it looks quite optimistic, but furlough is going to end, and are we confident that we're going to be able to proceed on target for that for the rest of the year?
Yeah, yes, the furlough is is the contractor's staff, Colin, and I don't know if you want to come in there, Mick, but we are confident that we will be able to get this right back on track. Mick?
Well, as confident as we can be. I mean, we don't know what is happening. I mean, if you look at events that are taking place and what's happening with COVID and the reactions to that, I think if there's no impact on events as a result of COVID, that I am entirely confident that we will get on with that loop and the green links, and I'm glad to report we will do so, events are permitting.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Any more questions? Good, thank you. So I do believe that Cabinet is asked to consider and comment on the report, so there's no further action required there. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 7, South Ribble Housing Strategy and Prevention of Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy. Councillor Bill Evans.
Thank you, Chair. It gives me great pleasure to present these two strategies tonight. The first one, the housing strategy, comes under my portfolio, but the second one, the prevention of homelessness and rough sleeping strategy, comes under Councillor Mick Titterington's portfolio. But because they are so closely matched, it was felt that we should present them both together. Earlier on in the year, we went out to consultation on both strategies, and we were partway through a 6-week consultation when the pandemic struck, so we extended it for another 4 weeks. So we actually had 10 weeks of consultation on the two documents. On the housing strategy, we don't need to have one. We could choose not to adopt it, but it is considered to be best practice for us to have one, so that's why we're going with it. But the other one, it is a legal requirement to have a homelessness strategy as part of the Homelessness Act 2002. You'll see on both the strategies that we've got some strategic priorities. The strategic priorities for the housing strategy are on paragraph 17. I'll read them out. First point, ensuring safe, secure, quality homes across all housing tenancies that people can afford to live in. Enable the delivery of affordable housing and supporting a balanced housing market. Supporting people to remain independent and help improve health and well-being and quality of life in their own homes. And reducing and preventing homelessness. And on the homelessness strategy, paragraph 24, reduce homelessness by increasing prevention, enhance the housing offer for temporary and longer term options, improve health and well-being, and ensure that levels of rough sleeping in the borough remain low. The portfolio recommendations are that is to note the consultation that has been undertaken on the two draft strategies, the comments and feedback received during the consultation period, and the improvements made to each of the strategies based on the feedback received, and also to endorse the approval and adoption of each of the strategies to deliver the Council's priorities for housing in South Ribble. To enable the Council to achieve its housing priorities and direct resources to deliver specific actions as identified in each of the strategies, and to enable a clear vision and strategic approach to the Council's housing services for the borough to 2025. And finally, to meet the Council's statutory duty under the Homelessness Act 2002 to carry out review of homelessness and rough sleeping in the borough, and to publish a strategy to prevent homelessness and rough sleeping. With that, Chair, I'll take any questions. Or Councillor Titterington and myself will take questions.
Thanks, Bill. Do we have a seconder for those recommendations?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any members wish to, on Cabinet, wish to add anything? Okay, any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, guessing that the fact that there was only 7 responses to the consultation must be somewhat of a disappointment. I wonder if you could give us some detail as to how many people were actually consulted or how the consultation was actually publicised. Thank you.
Jonathan? Yeah, which strategy, Alan, are you on about? The housing. Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we did publicise it very widely through our contact databases, also via the council's normal social media channels. Unfortunately, these kind of strategies don't tend to grab people's attention in terms of feedback. We did extend the consultation time period as well due to the low numbers. I think COVID probably has had an impact on this as well, but I think it's acknowledged that the response rate is quite low, but it's not unusual for this kind of quite detailed thematic strategy.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Any other points? Councillor Bretherton?
It's just on page 77, self and custom build housing. I'm just wondering if there's much of a demand for that in South Ribble, and if we know how many are on the list, how often it gets updated.
Jonathan?
Yeah, if I can come in again. This is actually a requirement of planning legislation that we must maintain the register for self and custom build. I've not got the firm figures in terms of how many people on there, but there is definitely interest in the borough for this. The numbers are quite low in terms of the people on the register, but I could circulate the actual number on the register after the meeting, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other points? Councillor Phil Smith?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose the response must be disappointing. I mean, it does say residents, it doesn't say how many organisations, it doesn't say how many interested parties, it doesn't say how many. But anyway, that apart, because that's already been covered. Just going back to the questions and the answers, I've been looking at this afternoon. The question: do you agree with the priorities identified in the housing strategy? I just wonder whether a cabinet member could just explain that for me, really, where it says responses received. Where it's got responses received, is that an individual response from each person, all 7 of them? As in agree, strongly agree, agree, strongly agree, agree, strongly agree, strongly disagree. Perhaps a cabinet member could just explain that. Is my understanding of that correct, or I'm talking through the top of my head?
Bill?
Because the figures were so low, we've managed to identify all the responses, and yeah, you've got what they said. The first part of it is agree, strongly agree, blah, 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 but then it goes on to explain what the actual comments were, and yeah, that's what we got.
It's I wholly, agree. The response back was disappointing, but there's sometimes nothing we can do about it. If people aren't wanting to respond to the consultation, then we can only but ask. Not that I believe it's had any type of negative impact on the strategies. I think they're very good documents and happy to endorse them. And I think in particular, the homelessness strategy is very timely. We were discussing as a cabinet earlier the significant numbers of individuals within South Ribble that presented themselves as homeless at the beginning of the pandemic was quite a surprise for all of us, and we must do everything we possibly can to support and prevent homelessness. And I think we'd all agree that we've got some challenging times ahead over the next 6, 12, 18 months, and so the adoption of these policies, in my view, is very timely. Phil?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, both important documents. Some of the stuff is obviously lifted off of previous documents, previous strategies, which is to be expected. And I suppose it's a question of you can take the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. If that's where we are with the interest from the community in these reports, it is disappointing.
Okay, Nick.
Yeah, can I? It is disappointing, but I think that what we need to acknowledge. You're right. I mean, we have had these strategies published before, and it's right and proper that we bring them up to date, particularly because of the changes in legislation, but also the change of circumstances. And I think that we have to recognise is that when we've got this strategy in, particularly in relation to homelessness, I mean, there are all kinds of different challenges that present themselves as we're going through. And if there is anybody, whether they're a member or a member of the public, who can bring forward suggestions where we can fulfill our obligations or our desires in terms of reducing homelessness to the irreducible number, then we will take them on board. I mean, it's an ongoing discussion. I mean, we're not sort of imposing this. If there is anybody on an ongoing basis who can come forward and offer suggestions that will improve our performance on this, then we'll willingly take that on board. But I know previously we have acknowledged the actions and the support that has been given by the staff, and I'd just like to add my thanks for the staff in the housing team for the work that they have done up to now, and certainly in meeting the challenges that were presented under the pandemic.
Yes, it's only very quickly, Chair. It's just there's no criticism involved here. It's just a question of that's what we've got, and that's what we've got to live with. Yeah.
So I'm going to call in Councillor Evans, and I believe Councillor Michael Green wishes to speak, and then Councillor Alan Ogilvie. Bill?
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to thank the staff as well for all the hard work they did developing the strategy, but all is not lost with the responses. This feeds back into the local plan as well, which is being developed at this moment in time. So a lot of what's in here goes in, and there'll be consultation on the local plan at a later date.
Thanks, Bill. Councillor Michael Green.
Thanks, Chairman. I welcome the Council bringing forward a new housing strategy, which of course builds on the previous housing strategy that the last administration brought in about 5 years ago now. So it's pleasing to see that you're taking a similar approach. There's a couple of points in particular that I welcome within the document, and that's the emphasis on having quality homes for the residents of South Hibble, and providing different types of housing which are appropriate to the population which is getting older. So it's that very point about the ageing population and catering for their needs. As the vast majority of homes that will be built in the future in South Hibble will be built by private developers, what steps does Councillor Evans have in mind to put in place to ensure that we can provide better quality housing and more housing which is suitable for the needs of the older population? Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Green, for your question. As you can see later on in the report, we're going to be discussing the Mackenzie's Arms and the standards that we want to build those out of properties to. We know we've got a big issue with affordable and social housing, or lack of it, and we're going to be having to look at that and see where the need is. But we're going to toughen up the local plan as well, and make sure the developers build what we want them to build and where we want them to build it, rather than them doing their own thing. But we'll have to wait and see how that works out. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and as well, Michael, there's clearly a couple of agenda items tonight that you'll wholeheartedly support, with the extra care being on there as well, and the Mackenzie's Arms, which is all about quality and different types of housing. But please, all members do also recall the administration is driving forward with an agenda for the council to build their own properties, not just private developers. Who's next? Councillor Jackie Elty.
Thank you. It's just a comment made earlier about the small amount of responses we've got. I think during COVID, priorities have shifted. People are engaged in other important issues to them, and that engagement in a process like this doesn't necessarily indicate a lack of interest when they're low in numbers. It may just be that other events have taken priority. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Very, very relevant point. Any other members have any points to raise? Councillor Ogilvie, sorry.
It's all right, Chair, not a problem. Yeah, it's just a quick question with my Deputy Armed Forces Champion hat on. I noticed in the homeless strategy that, I suppose, relatively good news that there was only one person, ex-forces person, who presented for advice. Am I right in thinking that the current arrangements through Select Move, where ex-forces personnel get a certain level of priority based on their time of service in the forces, that this strategy does not in any way adversely impact on that arrangement? Thank you.
Yeah, I believe you're absolutely right there, Alan. Jonathan, do you want to just confirm that?
Yeah, it doesn't have any impact on that particular prioritisation stays as it is.
Okay, thank you. Any final points? Good. So, Bill, can you just remind us again of the recommendations that you see and approvals you're seeking from Cabinet, please?
Sorry. Apologies. First recommendation is to note the consultation that has been undertaken on the two draft strategies, the comments and feedback received during the consultation period, and the improvements made to each of the strategies based on the feedback received. To endorse the approval and adoption of each of the strategies and to deliver the Council's priorities for housing in South Ribble. To enable the Council to achieve its housing priorities and direct resources to delivering specific actions as identified in each of the strategies. To enable a clear vision and strategic approach to the Council's housing services for the borough up to 2025. And finally, to meet the Council's statutory duty under the Homelessness Act 2002 to carry out review of homelessness and rough sleeping in the borough, and to publish a strategy to prevent homelessness and rough sleeping. So that's it, Chair.
Thanks, Bill, and that was seconded by Councillor McTillerington. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 8, the South Ribble Extra Care Scheme, and I'll invite in the Deputy Leader, Councillor McTillerington.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to bring this report before Council. I think reference has been made in the previous discussion about the ageing population that we have in the borough, and I'm pleased to note that people are living longer, but with that comes sometimes the people need extra care and support as they develop and reach the ageing or go through the ageing process. And I think the extra care facility provides that support, and it's at the same time it allows people to live independently and within the community. LCC Housing with Care Strategy 2018 to 25 set out an aim for at least one extra care facility to be in each of the boroughs, and we are anxious to get a facility here in South Ribble. The report does highlight the requirement needs of such places going forward, and I think we're talking about 204 by 204 places by 2025. So Chorley already has a facility, and which some of us have visited and have been extremely impressed by what was offered on there. And I would hope that all members would be anxious to see such a facility here in South Ribble. I think a previous question did ask about the nature of the homes that we need. If you look at the population projections, and clearly this is a facility that is much needed. And I think, as I've said before, it does enable people who are getting older, who need that extra care and support, but can engage with the community and be involved in it and live independently. So, I mean, the report is asking for us to identify a site, and we're recommending that West Paddock is that site to be built. I think that is a perfect location for such a facility, and I hope that, well, I'm seeking cabinet support for that, together with a figure of 50,000 to allow for the initial feasibility study to take place, together with the business case, financial and legal advice associated with that. And with that, I present, well, I commend the report to Cabinet and seek its support.
Thanks, Mick. A desperately required scheme within South Ribble. As you say, the Lancashire County Council's housing with care and support strategy is quite clear. In every district up and down Lancashire, these are required. It is a social rented scheme, not for sale. We have an issue, don't we, sometimes with the terminology of affordable homes. It's a social rented scheme, and clearly, Mick, you're looking at this coming in house as well and managed by as part of the council's portfolio. Looking at the requirement for 204 individual units, this could be the first of 2 or even possibly 3 that South Ribble may require by 2025. I've been lucky enough to work on some of these schemes myself in other areas of the county, and they are a wonderful place for the more senior of us to look to retire to with differing support needs available. And I don't think we could have found a better potential site, Mick, than as the site you recommended next door here at West Paddock, and it's wholly sustainable and exactly the type of location that the commissioners and the county council would be looking to support. So I'm more than happy to second your proposals as presented. Any other comments from anyone on Cabinet? Aniela?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to say that I was one of the people that visited the Chorley extra care scheme after it had just been opened, I think, and I thought the layout, that it felt so like modern and clean. It wasn't like what you would imagine like an older people's home to be like, because it's an interim. But I think that what impressed me the most was that previously on that site there'd been a dance school, and they'd not got rid of that. They'd put in the bottom of the extra care scheme, they've put a sprung floor, so it's still a leisure facility for kids to come and use. So I'm going to be hoping that we see something similar to that. I think Mick's probably mentioned it in the bottom of this, so that local people can use it. Thanks.
And I know a question, Mick, you're looking at having, I know with a due process to go through, design, planning and procurement, but are you looking for us to commence on site at some time in 2021? Is that the outline programme?
Well, as I say, I mean, if we get the approval for the feasibility study, I mean, we would hope to be moving forward as quickly as possible. But yes, certainly in that timescale.
Bill? Sorry, Councillor Evans.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I also visited this facility in Chorley. If I remember rightly, there were 67 apartments, and the day we went, they had 460 applications. So there is obviously a need in the area for something similar to that. Thanks, Chair.
Well, certainly. Any other comments from Cabinet members? Okay. Any comments from members not on Cabinet? Angie?
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Yeah, I think it's a great idea, driven by the demographics of the United Kingdom and certainly most of Europe as well, the ageing population. Just a question I'd like to ask, unless I've got this wrong, is it true that there's no bus stops along this area here, is there? or have I got that wrong? And if there isn't any bus stops or a bus stop, surely a centre like this should be supplied with that level of service, a bus stop, so that at least visitors can visit the people there. And also, a lot of elderly people can't drive in later years, but still capable of travelling out. And I just feel it might be something that should be considered within the plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. Mick?
I would entirely agree with you. I mean, I think there are a number of places, not just with where elderly people are in need of a bus service, as I suspect that the majority of members within their wards are pressing for some form of bus route there, so that people can access that. And I think, as part of the green agenda, that's another thing that will push that. But yeah, I take on board that. I mean, well, the main purpose of the extra care, which is being mentioned, facility, is to ensure that people can live independent lives and can be a part of the community. I mean, and that's why with the facility, when it's built, we hope that there will be facilities there that the public can use. But in terms of, I think there is a bus stop here actually at the moment, but if there wasn't, then it would be something that we would take on board. Entirely agree with the question asked. And the
thanks, Mick. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Yeah, Councillor Foster, just some clarification actually. As a member of planning, obviously, I think it's crucial that we obviously, before this becomes part of the planning process, if we could get a chance of going to see the place at Chorley. When you say there's 204, did you say units? Does that imply that they're going to be separate bungalows, or is it just another block of flats? Because I feel that this area, especially encompassing Shrugs Wood, would be a beautiful, attractive area with loads of green spaces and landscape, a lovely environment for the older people to live. And if they're in separate accommodation, because I presume this is an accommodation of a sort of an interim nature where they want to downsize, but they don't exactly want to go into a home yet. This will be a nice area. I mean, even encompassing a bowling green or a centre or something for them to join in and make sort of an elderly village type of environment on that site. But obviously, I've not been to see the one in Chorley, so I don't really know anything about it. But if that could be arranged at some point, I'd be very interested in going. And I hope and trust that you take on board my sentiments of the landscaping and situation lends itself to that type of property with Shrugs Wood there, you know, which is a nice area for them to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the first thing is that it won't be 204 units. That's the number that is required or that is suggested is needed by 2025. I think the facility that we're proposing, well, certainly if it's similar to Chorley, it'll be around about 64 to 68 units. It will not be bungalows, but I do take on board everything else that you said in terms of the landscaping and the ability for people to enjoy the surroundings and engage with the community, and that's a fundamental about the extra care facility. I mean, I can't think of any reasons not to have such a facility, and the important thing is to make it as enjoyable so that people can fulfill their lives and enjoy a quality of life that they deserve. We don't look at it upon as an interim stop. it is somewhere where people can make their home and, as I say, enjoy a reasonable and fulfilling lifestyle.
Thanks, Mick. Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I very much welcome this. My group very much welcomes this. It's something that I think is needed, and we would very much support it. There has been some talk this evening about the elderly. It all seems to have been around the elderly, but I understand that these facilities are not just necessarily for the elderly, that they are in a wider encompassing for people with disabilities. I don't know whether that would be the same here, but I understand that has been something that has actually gone on in other homes. And the other point that I would just like to ask about is that there has been a number of them built around Lancashire, as I understand it. A lot of it with the work with Eric Wright Group, with the Health and Care Division, and I wondered whether it would be helpful for us to have a conversation with them before we actually get down the road too far, because apparently they have quite a number of expertise, I understand, from speaking to county, and therefore they may be very helpful in actually moving this project forward. Thank you.
Gary, just want to come in.
Yeah, I'll come in on the point about residents. So the purpose of the extra care predominantly is, and is in a lot of instances, is people with low level dementia. And the idea is you provide a stimulating environment for them so that their dementia doesn't get any worse. So that can apply equally to older people, but there are equally a number of younger people who unfortunately get the onset of early dementia, and it's that type of individual who will be looking to access this facility.
Yeah, I mean, perfectly take that on board. I think there has already been discussions with Lancashire, and they will be ongoing. I mean, I think the main point is to make sure that it meets the needs of the population, and also it creates that environment that we want to see. So, yeah, we'll talk to anybody and everybody to achieve that.
Thanks, Mick. Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this I think is a much needed facility, and I welcome the proposal. I do have just a query though. When the extra care scheme was first mentioned through the council, it was mentioned that there was an opportunity for funding via the town deal. Now I'm guessing that with the location being where you're suggesting that opportunity for funding via the town deal has been lost. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I don't think it was ever going to necessarily be funded by the town deal, but there are significant grants potentially available, Alan, from Homes England, and Homes England have just late last week announced the next tranche of subsidies and funding for their affordable home schemes is what it falls under. So I think it actually says within the report anyway, one of the recommendations to attract subsidies or grant funding from Homes England, and I think that's something that Jonathan and the team will get straight onto. But I don't think it was part of the town fund, unless Gary tells me I'm incorrect.
I think if you created the right scheme, maybe particularly around town centre, you could potentially attract that kind of grant. I think this is just slightly out of town. It's probably, I don't know whether it's in the boundary, Jonathan, or not. It probably is. So technically, there might be a case to be made because it's providing additional housing units. So you might be able to make that case. I don't think it's in the current plans. And that's a matter of choice, yeah.
Okay then, any other points from anyone? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not opposed to the recommendations at all. There's just a couple of points arising from the information which is in the report. And we've heard about Chorley. I understand there are 3 already built and running, and 2 are due for completion fairly soon. My question really is there a standard specification for this? Because it's an initiative by the county, which leads on to an estimate of 10 to 12 million for capital costs. And I just wonder, because there are 3 running, whether we know what the revenue costs are concerned, because it implies that this council will run this facility when it's built. And just my last point really is on paragraph 29. Some time ago we thought that next door was the preferred site for the leisure centre, and you voted unanimously on that. So if it's no longer the preferred site, do we have a preferred site for the leisure centre?
So I'll let Mick come in a second on the latter part of the question. In respect to the funding, Colin, the funding comes through, there are significant capital grants available for Homes England based on the number of units that are constructed, and that does significantly reduce the bill, so to speak. This is all backed up as well by a detailed financial model that has to be scrutinised and will be presented to the Cabinet prior to any approval, and that's capital costs, any grant funding available, and then the payback via the lease and rental of the units. So we're quite comfortable with that. In respect to the leisure centre, I'll hand over to the Deputy Leader.
Well, I mean, I can't report on the site at tonight's meeting, but I mean, it's ongoing and under consideration. But it does seem to me, and that's why I'm recommending it to Cabinet, is that the location for the extra care scheme at West Paddock is an ideal location, and I'm just anxious for us to support that and get on with it.
Councillor Clark.
If I could just come back on a couple of points, the one that you raised, Councillor Foster, that as far as the costs are concerned, I'm talking about the revenue cost, will that be built into the consultant's brief, so we can get some idea when it comes back as to what it's going to cost the council if we're going to, from the point of view of going to deliver it ourselves, manage it ourselves? And does the answer from Councillor Titherington, yes, we have a preferred site for the new leisure centre somewhere and we're looking at it?
It's yes from me and it's yes from him, if that helps. Yeah. Any other points from anyone? Okay, good. Mick, can I just ask you, please, just to go through the 5 recommendations, if you don't mind? Thank you. Just so we're clear.
Thank you. The portfolio recommendations are to approve the recommended site West Paddock for the development of an extra care scheme, to approve the procurement of a suitable consultant team to undertake a feasibility study and develop a business case into the scope and viability of an extra care scheme to be built on the land at West Paddock, including for financial and legal advice where required. To approve a revenue budget figure of 50,000 to allow for the initial feasibility study, business case, financial and legal advice, and to request officers to work with Homes England on the funding of an extra care scheme in South Ribble Borough, and to bring to Cabinet a report detailing the initial feasibility study and business case to progress an extra care scheme.
Thanks, Mick. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Evans, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thanks, Mick. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 9, Worden Park overflow car park. Councillor Sue Jones.
Thank you, Chair. The report that is coming before us today is just to seek approval for the award of the contract to the successful bidder for the overflow car park at Worden. We have 2 recommendations: to accept tender number 2 and to spend the budget of £120,000 from the capital programme. I think we all know the background to the reason why we're in this situation. they're listed on page on points 6 to 10. I'm happy to go over that in more detail if you want me to, and if you think it would be helpful for me to give a timeline of how the work is going to be going through, then I'm happy to do that if it will help.
Yeah, if you could just quickly mention the outline programme dates, Sue.
Yeah. Okay, so the current timeline is as follows. The work will start at the end of September, beginning of October, depending on the commitment of the contractor. It's expected to take approximately 10 weeks. We have to allow for 2 weeks over Christmas, and the work should be completed by mid to late January. We then have to allow for settlement for the work, and we would look to open the car park in March or at the very latest for Easter, which is April this year. Obviously, that work is dependent on the weather, but that is the timeline that we're looking at the moment.
Thanks, Sue. It's good to see clearly everything's been tendered and procured fully in line with the council's procurement regulations. I always do find it astonishing the range of costs you get on tenders, sometimes ranging from 104,000 all the way through to 233,000. I don't know what they were looking to supply, but hey ho. And I'm more than happy, Sue, to second your proposals. Has anyone on Cabinet got any questions or any points to make on this? No? Any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Clark and then Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to ask, as far as the existing contract is concerned, has due diligence been carried out on him, and what safeguards are there, bearing in mind what's happened on Worthing Park previously, to do with post-completion issues and any insolvency that might occur?
The pre-qualification is. So I've heard it. The council always pre-qualifies on any tenders, Colin, as you know, that we put out to market. And as for insolvency and all those other issues, they'll be dealt with appropriately through the contract, Sue, that's going to be placed.
I mean, these things are usually been built into tender documents. I don't know. The monitoring officer previously was adamant these should be built into tender documents, and that's why I'm asking the question.
They probably are, Colin. They will have been. The terms and conditions of the contract will have formed part of the tender.
Yeah, the council have adopted standard form terms and conditions for works contracts of this nature. So yes, and that forms part of the tender pack that people are expected to bid on. So yes, the council are protected. The issue around future insolvency, a contract of this nature, it'd be hard to insist on a bond because the value is only £100,000. So the protections are as much as we can expect to get in this kind of contract.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as one of the ward councillors, obviously I greatly welcome the fact that this is now happening. It's been happening for a while. Finally, it is going to happen. Yeah, you've mentioned the huge range of costs. I do have a slight concern that we are proposing to go with the lowest cost and the second lowest quality score. Now, I know the report goes into the reason for the problems in the original overflow car park. It was all down to the students not driving properly. Personally, I think it had a lot more to do with the ground conditions on which the car park was laid. We also have at the moment an issue with the zip wire on the playground, where the contractor has not performed, shall we say, as expected, and that's been now down for a couple of months. So my question really is, based on the experience of the last car park, Are we intending doing anything different? Are we increasing the sort of day-to-day monitoring by someone from the council on the quality and standard of the work as the work progresses? As I say, the two examples I've highlighted there, I fear that perhaps insufficient monitoring was taking place during those particular contracts, and I'm just looking for reassurance that we've learned the lessons and that we'll do something different this time round. Thank you.
Sue?
Yes, I think as far as the original car park was concerned, I think we all know that the overflow car park, I think I said this before, as its name suggests, was never meant to take the amount of traffic and parking that was allowed to happen over the last couple of years. When the passes were issued or sold to the Runshaw students, it meant that the overflow car park was used on a very, very regular basis. It meant that we weren't able to check and maintain the car park because of that situation. That won't happen now. There is no way we're going back to Runshaw students coming on to the car park. And I'm not a technical person as far as the surface is concerned, but I'm absolutely confident that the surface will be right for the use of that car park in the future.
You'll be glad to know, Sue, that the technical person, Jem Mullin, has indicated she wishes to speak.
Hello, just to say that yes, all the technical specifications for the work have been thoroughly checked, and on-site monitoring will be undertaken with the contractors. Just to confirm, the zip wire in Worden Park itself, that was found to be incorrect on a monitoring visit by one of our officers. When they were viewing the installation of the zip wire, they weren't very happy with the installation, so it was found to be a problem during that monitoring of the contractors. So we are thoroughly monitoring all our contractors, and obviously as soon as problems are identified, then we were contacting the companies and as the case of the zip wire, getting a full reinstallation of the zip wire to make sure that it's safe, and the same will happen with the car park. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Any other points from anyone? Councillor Turner?
The value of the down-selected supplier is £104,095, and it's referred to as a cost. Can I just clarify with you, is that a fixed price, non-revisable for the task?
Yes, as far as, yes.
Yeah, I sometimes struggle with some of the expressions in the reports across the council, really, where cost is actually, certainly from my experience, doesn't include profit and isn't actually necessarily a fixed price. But anyway, in this case, that is a fixed price, non-revisable. Thank you.
Okay, it's fixed price, presuming lump sum contract for the tendered works, Angela, yeah. Councillor Phil Smith?
Yeah, just a quick one, anecdotal evidence of bidding process. Normally the lowest bid in these sort of cases is desperate, and the highest bid really is bidding not to get the job.
Thanks, Phil. Any other points from anyone? Okay, good. Sue, do you just mind confirming again the recommendations that you're asking Cabinet to approve, please?
Yes, that Cabinet agree that tender number 2 in table 1 is accepted for the construction works at the overflow car park in Worden Park, and the contract awarded to this bidder accordingly. And 2, that permission is granted to spend the budget of £120,000 in the capital programme for these works.
Okay, thank you. Sue, is that seconded? Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving swiftly on. Agenda item 10, Mackenzie Arms Development. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Thanks, Chair. Another exciting step forward. I've brought a few reports now to Cabinet on this development, but we are a step further forward with the Planning Committee granting planning permission last month. I think if I just read out the portfolio recommendations to start, that Cabinet welcomed the decision taken by the Planning Committee to approve the application of the development of 15 new homes for affordable rent on the former Mackenzie Arms site. I think it's important just to emphasise that these are for affordable rent. The Cabinet approves an increase to the capital budget from 2.217 million to 2.253 million to deliver the scheme, and agree to commit Section 106 commuted funds sums funding to cover the additional 36,000 forecast cost. That Cabinet requests officers undertake an open procurement route evaluated based on cost, quality and social value for the project, which allows for the new affordable housing development achieving the Passive House standard, which represents the very highest quality in terms of environmental outcomes. To bring back to Cabinet a further report to approve the contractor to deliver the project. That Cabinet requests officers to explore Homes England funding should a new round of funding become available. That Cabinet note the advice received in relation to right to buy implications and to agree to resolve the issue of a potential overage claim through the purchase of indemnity insurance if required. And finally, that Cabinet note the outcome of the audit into the original purchase of the Mackenzie Arms site. Probably begin my further comments with going back to the audit. Members who've been around a while will know there was a lot of controversy about the terms under which we purchased the Mackenzie Arms site and the difficulty that's led us to. Also the fact that, of course, we were never then able to use the site for the purpose that we originally purchased it. I'm hoping that this report will now draw a line under that. Some people will continue to ask questions, but we've put as much in this report as we feel we legally can. So I think hopefully we can move on, tidy up that mess and get on and deliver something for the people of South Ribble. I don't have anything other than that to add. I think the report is self-explanatory. It's just another step forward on a project that we've discussed many times, and we'll be discussing it again when we come to appoint a contractor. So with that, I'm happy to propose those recommendations to Cabinet with the recommendation, of course, that we accept.
Thanks, Matthew. In line with one of the questions asked earlier on the other scheme, when are you hoping to have the builders on site here?
Again, we would hope certainly by early next year we could be on with this. I think you implied before that the forward plan looks very busy, and it does, but also we will be getting on and delivering stuff that we've already committed to, as well as planning stuff for the future.
Thanks, Matthew. I think what we have here, and I think it needs to be made clear to members and any members of the public that are watching here, that there's two different elements to this report, isn't there? There's the great news about the scheme moving forward, but then there's the attempt, as we're doing, to try and close out these issues from the audit. And I think it's only fair that we make it clear we've come under significant pressure from a number of people, particularly over the last 18 months, to publish the audit into the procurement of the site, which we're not in a position to release. So what the officers have done is provided as much detail in the report in front of us, Matthew, that is acceptable, with a view to this just to the council moving on once and for all. What's not the council's greatest purchase, it's not been the council's greatest day when this all went through, and there has been significant controversy, but hopefully that's it now. And what we are concentrating on as an administration, as a cabinet, is the delivery of quite possibly some of the highest quality, affordable, social rented houses in the northwest of England. And this is the benchmark, Matthew, isn't it, as we move forward? And clearly, I'm really pleased that they're in Bamber Bridge. Any comments from anyone else on Cabinet? Bill?
Thanks, Chair. I wonder if Councillor Tomlinson would agree with me that it was a bad deal when we bought the site. I'm glad we're moving on and getting something good out of it. I feel the council and members were misled previously, and it's a shame the full audit isn't being published so that everyone could see what's happened. But we are where we are, and let's get going with it. I'd like to second it as well, Chair. Thanks.
Well, Councillor Evans will be pleased to know that I do agree with him. Clearly, it wasn't this council's finest hour. The report says you could easily argue that the cost we paid for this site was reasonable, but the clauses that came with it and the fact that we never really followed through on ensuring we could use this land for our original purpose have left us with a site which we can do very little with in terms of the range of choices. And so I think coming up with this plan is as exciting a plan as you could possibly imagine for this site. And it just happens to be in exactly the right place for this sort of development.
And again, it's in-house, Matthew, these are council homes. Yeah, good, thank you. Any other points from members on Cabinet? Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm pleased that we've got to this stage, I really am. I think it has been a very long and tortuous road that we've all gone down. When we actually brought it to Council in 2012, it was a unanimous decision that we purchased this land with the sincere hope that we could take it forward for what the purposes were envisaged, which was to make it a development that could open up Wesley Street Mill. We have subsequently found that because of the clauses that were put in, we became hamstrung by what was in those clauses. And I think it's very sad that we have got to this situation with that clause. I've read the illegal documents in the last few days. I've also read the full report from the auditors, which I only recently found out was available. That full report has some interesting comments in it, which are a revelation, I have to say, to me. I'll leave that for now. But nevertheless, I am pleased that we will be taking this forward, and I'm pleased that we will have some housing and we can make use of that land now. And I wish it every success, Mr Chairman.
Thanks, thanks, Margaret. We're with you in this, that as you know, the audit that we're discussing wasn't instigated by this administration. It was done prior to our taking up control of this council. And as far as we're concerned, Margaret, it's time to move on. It's a bad decision. I think that it says in the report what's gone on. Members did vote to buy the site. Members clearly weren't provided necessarily with the correct information. But what we want to concentrate on now, as you say, is actually the 15 state-of-the-art affordable council homes, which we're really excited to be delivering. Any other members? Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, bit of clarification. Cabinet member mentioned that the procurement route would be evaluated based on cost, quality and social value. Cost and quality, I can understand how you could measure that. What national standard gives criteria for evaluating social value?
I'm going to be frank with you, I'm the finance portfolio holder. I'm not going to be procuring this site. I don't know whether Councillor Belinsky-Gelder might be able to add anything to that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Is that okay? I mean, I am going to be bringing a community wealth building action plan forward, which will have more details about social value in it. But social value, I suppose, for, you know, it has got, the procurement do have a social value portal, which they can now use, which is nationally recognised, so that you can weight things in terms of social value and value for money. But I think the overarching thing about social value is it's value for people, which is different to value for money. So it's with these housing, I think the whole message with these houses is that people are the most important part of it, and that's what the social value aspect is. But I think with the workshops which are coming and the action plan for community wealth building, there'll be more detail on that.
Yeah, it's fair to say that the procurement's one of the key pillars, Aniela, isn't it, of the social value and the community wealth building that you've been looking at. Alan?
Yeah, just thanks for that response. You mentioned that there already was some kind of documentation in place. Can we get access to that, please?
It's going to be brought to Cabinet, I believe, October or November, Aniela. It's in the future. It's coming to Cabinet in the next month or two, and it'll be fully debated. It's work in progress. It's only an initial draft position now. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Yeah, just a general point really about in terms of our procurement route as a council. Obviously, I think I'm right in saying, due to the conditions that were placed against the sale of this asset, are we now going to do like a lessons learned to make sure that this doesn't happen again and our procurement process is strengthened accordingly? Thank you.
Yes, it wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen again, to be quite honest with you. Councillor Turner, it just wouldn't. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I think the lessons learned need to be learned in the legal department of this council, I think, at the time, and I'm sure the monitoring officer would not allow things like that to happen again. But with going back to social value, this council were actually, I would say, instrumental, but we were part of discussions with the LEP with regard to social value and a social value strategy. I'm not quite sure whether that was actually published in the end, but the LEP and the County Council, we were chairing some of those meetings with regard to social value a few years ago. So,
yeah, just to add, the social values being mentioned, Phil, quite often with respect to the city deal, and there is a strong feeling that it has achieved absolutely zero social value, if I'm being bluntly honest with you, and hence why Aniela and the team are looking at us developing our own bespoke community wealth building portfolio and strategies and policies here in South Ribble, because, you know, social value is really important to the new administration, and what we need to do and what Aniela is going to present to all councillors is some clear demonstrable outputs that and what we want to see from social value. Councillor Margaret Smith.
Could I just make one comment, Mr. Chairman, about the city deal and social value? I think what happened was with the city deal, it originally was there to put infrastructure into this and bring in jobs and house building, and then everybody jumped on the bandwagon and wanted a bit of the action, and consequently there just wasn't the money to go around. I think we've got to be careful that we don't allow that to happen, because otherwise you just get stretched to such a degree that nothing actually moves forward.
I agree, Margaret. I'm still looking for the 10,000 jobs that have been created, but never mind. Anyone else? Sorry, Councillor Brotherton.
Sorry, it's just thank you, Chairman. It's just a technical question on site constraints on page 183, paragraph 40 and 41. I just wondered if it could be explained what discounted price is. Is there a certain formula? Is it based on a percentage, time? And in terms of the £17,000 indemnity insurance, what is the chance of in the future someone making a claim against that? I'm assuming it's relating to overage, and does overage mean a profit, a substantial profit, or what are the figures? Thank you.
Matthew?
Well, one option is to take out an indemnity insurance, and just for transparency, we put that in there to let people know that this is an option. There are other options that we are exploring that might not need us to take that out. But under the right to buy, people may in the future have the right to buy one of these houses, and that would mean we would be making some money on the land, that the clause that were put in the original contract said we wouldn't be able to sell at any profit until 2032, which is undoubtedly a complication. I say again, this is an option because we are looking at other options that mean we won't need that type of indemnity insurance. I'm sorry, that's that's not a very specific answer to the question, but I think we put that in so that members know we are looking to cover ourselves in this way, but we might not need to do it.
What we'll do, we'll ask the monitoring officer to come in.
Is there a set formula in terms of percentage of the end value? I take it.
There is a formula. I don't know it off the top of my head, but yes, it is calculated by reference. I don't think it's to necessarily how long. You've got to have had a certain qualification period of occupation in order to actually trigger it.
I think it's fair to say, Damien, as well, where we're going to get to is the legal team are going to come forward with a form of lease that actually negates the right to buy, if that's the correct terminology. So we don't have the risk that they could be bought. Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, good. So Matthew, you know what I'm going to ask you to do again, don't you? Just so that we're absolutely clear on the decision that's been made.
Yeah. Okay, so the portfolio recommendations are that Cabinet welcomed the decision taken by Planning Committee on the 27th of August 2020 to approve the application of the development of 15 new homes for affordable rent on the former Mackenzie Arms site. That Cabinet approves an increase to the capital budget from 2.217 million to 2.253 million to deliver the scheme, and agree to commit Section 106 commuted sums funding to cover the additional £36,000 forecast cost. That Cabinet requests officers undertake an open procurement route evaluated based on cost, quality and social value for the project, which allows for the new affordable housing development achieving Passive House standard, which represents the very highest quality in terms of environmental outcomes. I do wish there was some punctuation in that sentence, but I got through it anyway. That Cabinet, that we ask officers to bring back to Cabinet a further report to approve the contractor to deliver the project. That we request officers to explore Homes England funding if a new round of funding becomes available. That Cabinet note the advice received in relation to the right to buy implications and agree to resolve the issue of a potential overage claim through the purchase of indemnity insurance if required, and that Cabinet notes the outcome of the audit into the original purchase of the Mackenzie Arms site. I so move.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I'm happy to second that. Is everyone in favour? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. Great stuff. Okay, back to Matthew again, sorry, Councillor Tomlinson again. Q1 Budget Monitoring Report 2020-2021, agenda item 11.
Okay, so this is our financial report after at the end of the first quarter of this financial year, a quarter of which we've probably never seen the like before. And yet I'm really pleased. The first recommendation is asking us to note the forecast underspend so far is just £29,000. So there are movements across various portfolios, and in some areas we spent a little bit more than we thought, and in others a little bit less. But the overall effect to the budget is just £29,000. We're asked to approve the allocation of the staffing savings target and the 37,000 residual shared services savings target against the £500,000 forecast staffing underspend. We are asked to approve the use of the reserves for some one-off increases to the revenue budget. These are things that were decided during the COVID lockdown. £20,000 to dial-a-ride, £26,000 on IT costs for the IDOCS Enterprise and Capability Review, and the £50,000 revenue budget, which was referred to for the extra care facility next door. And we're also asked to approve the reprofile budgets for the capital programme, which reflect forecasted underspend against the existing budgets as detailed in Appendix C. I think Appendix C was what was referred to right at the beginning under the forward plan. Undoubtedly, some of the capital projects that we committed to in the budget in February are simply not going to be delivered in this financial year, and I think it's just important we admit that really early. We reprofile the capital programme to something which is a bit more honest and deliverable. I give notice now that we might have to do this again once as things settle, if things settle down, and we're a bit clearer about where we're going in terms of our ability to spend the money, and indeed whether we might want to change where we spend some of this capital money to reflect the new normal. So with that, I know that James is online, so if we get any technical questions, I'm sure he'll be able to help, but I'll do my best in the first instance to answer any specific questions that people have.
Thanks, Matthew. I'll ask you to read them out again, and I'm happy to second those. And I think one of the points that we've discussed, isn't it, Matthew, is that the real challenge for the budget is more next year and the year after, in respect to the full impact for COVID, and that's something that I know you and James are already looking at, and it's as part of the budget process. But it is commendable that we're sat here today with hopefully a slight surplus, but as you say, we don't know what we don't know, and there could be some considerable shifts in the budget still. Yeah,
I think it's important to point out that the way that the money comes in for council tax and business rates, there's usually a lag. So any businesses that might be struggling this year, we won't see that impact on our budget until next year and the year after. You'll recall at the budget, and goodness me, didn't we have some foresight there? We put all the money that we didn't spend last year into the business rates reserve, so that there is a very healthy amount of money in that reserve, which could potentially, we might be very grateful for. But then again, let's be positive. South Ribble has ridden out recessions before, has performed better than other areas before in terms of business growth, and it may well be that our hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses out there can indeed ride this out, and we might not need it, but goodness me, weren't we fortunate to put that money, or maybe wasn't James full of foresight when he recommended that we put that money into the business rate review just before the budget.
Thanks, Matthew. Any questions or comments from any members on Cabinet? No, any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Ogilvie and Councillor Brotherton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one. I'm looking at the table of revenue forecasted variations on page 192, which tells us of the £29,000 surplus over the quarter. However, if you look at the bottom two lines in the table, the council has actually received £130,000 more in relation to COVID than they actually spent to date. So if you take COVID out of the equation, for bulk standard day-to-day council activity, we're actually £100,000 overspent.
Yeah, we are actually, but that also includes things like not getting money in for car parks. 92,000. We made our car parks free for the town centre. We lost £92,000. So it is, you know, it swings and balances. We're grateful for the money that we got for the government, but my goodness, haven't we been able to spend it? And some of those, there is an argument, I suppose, that car park reduced income we could have put under COVID spending, I suppose. And then that would have, but there, you know, there's a range of things that we did because of COVID that perhaps, having heard what you've said, Alan, maybe we could have included that under there. I'm sure the accountants wouldn't let us because you know what they're like about having things under the right columns. But again, you know, I accept what you're saying, but the fact is, we're still only forecast for that 29,000 over the year.
Thanks, Matthew. Damien?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just referring back to my question that I raised initially about the Bellis Way playground. On page 215, it shows a forecast cost of £20,000, and looking at the years ahead, revised budgets, it's still at £20,000, but the previous figures that we looked at were £30,000, and I'm just wondering where the difference might have gone. So there's an extra £10,000 there that's not included anymore, and I'm just wondering where that money's gone.
Yeah, if I'm really honest, I don't know. I tried to have a look back through previous reports. At the budget, we just agreed a £500,000 figure for playgrounds at Hague Avenue, Hurst Grange, Bellis Way and Bent Lane. So I've not been able to find where we said it would be £30,000. I'm happy to follow it up with you. I certainly haven't at any stage agreed to reduce it by £10,000. I'm not sure whether Councillor Jones, with her parks hat on, has agreed to a reduction, but I think it's something we can sort out of the meeting.
I don't know whether Jennifer is still here. I would have to confirm with her about that.
Yeah, there's a cabinet paper coming at next cabinet, and we haven't reduced the budget down. I'm not sure what the interpretation of the budget report, but the budget hasn't been reduced down. So the paper coming to cabinet will be the 430.
Needs to be nice to us, Damien.
Yeah, well,
Leader, just for absolute clarity, I think if Councillor Bretherton emails me about this, and then I can get him an email back, then he's got it in writing that it's going to be 30,000. I think he'll be happier, and we can just move on.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's just, I believe the Friends group have applied for funding, and it's match funding, and the application's gone in for £30,000. So that's quite a relief that it's still £30,000.
Rest assured, Damien, there's nothing dodgy going on here, and it'll be what it'll be, yeah. And it's you've said Councillor Tomlinson and myself are willing to commit to that, as well as Councillor Jones is. If nothing else, it could be a typo. It's just the way the money's being moved around. Any other questions from anybody? Councillor Mrs. Smith.
There's just a couple of things, Matthew, please. It's the way the report, I think, at this point is written as regards one of the recommendations. It's recommendation 3, and there it talks about a staff saving target and 37,000 residual shared services savings target. So there's a shared service savings target there. And then on the following page, it says there is a deficit in the shared services savings target.
James, are you there?
I am. So the original budget set back in February had a savings target for the first phase of shared services, 233,000. Now a report that's gone to Shared Services Joint Committee has that in about 196,000. So in 2020-21, we will be short, albeit in only about 30,000 short of the original savings proposal, which of course was proposed over 6 months ago. So that's what this report is referring to, is that we are short this year, and the underspend, the £499,000 staffing underspend, will contribute to that £30,000 shortfall, albeit will be revised when we set the budget again next year. So.
I'm glad I'm not an accountant, Margaret.
I think the point I'm trying to make here is that this is a public document that is actually going out to the public, and anybody reading this would have a great deal of difficulty even getting anywhere near understanding how this actually works. And I think possibly if we could have a little bit more ease of how we actually put this together, I think would be helpful, because it really doesn't help anybody to be so convoluted. That's the point I'm making on that one. If I could just move on to page 194, which is about the enforcement posts which are listed there. And I know we've got some agency cover, and may I say I am grateful for it at the moment, because we are having some success with one of our problems that we have in my ward, our ward, I should say. So I'm very grateful for the agency cover that is there. But I am still very concerned that we had two enforcement officers. Neither of them are in a permanent post now. Both of them have left, and two others have reduced their hours. Are we going to make some progress in actually getting some permanent enforcement officers to actually take up the work slack if this agency gentleman actually suddenly decides he can't continue for us?
Okay, Jonathan, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm, we have an agency, a member of staff who's been with us a good time and did work for a period for us for last year, who's doing a great job. We've also recently been out to recruitment for a new enforcement officer, and the new lady started with us in post last week. She's been with us a week, so we're currently got one permanent member of staff in plus the agency at the moment. So what we're doing is just reviewing the workload of those two officers at the moment to see whether we need to fill the two posts permanently or not. But the agency staff has been retained longer term at the moment to work on those complex cases.
Thanks, Jonathan. Gary, and then Matthew.
Yeah, just I kind of just a point to make here about enforcement in particular. It is a particular skill set, and we struggled, South Ribble struggled along with many other authorities to get that right skill set. It may be that moving forward, that this kind of mixed economy approach, which is a core staff level, but on a very complex enforcement matters that require more experience. Excuse me. We might use this as a model moving forward. We're just having a look at it.
Matthew?
And I mean, just from a member's point of view, this table 4, sorry, not table 4, the one that identifies the vacancies, which allows people to ask questions like that. This is something that I insisted becomes part of reports. We never used to get this, but when I was chair of scrutiny, I was always concerned about the vacancies that we were carrying, the plans we had to fill them, and that's why this item is now included in the report. So, and I think just highlighted, it gives members the chance to ask questions like that to ensure that where we are carrying vacancies, we're doing our best to fill them to the establishment.
Good point, Matt. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to raise the point about recommendation 3 that Councillor Smith has raised, actually, because reading it's very confusing. I think it could have been written in a better form. I understand it, and I hope all the Cabinet members understand it, but I doubt it myself. It could have been better explained, I think. And can I just ask about a project which is close to my heart, and that's the Civic Centre new entrance. The scheme has been postponed. I don't know what that means, whether it means postponed altogether or deferred, but it says that 150,000, which was allocated to that, is still forecast to spend 150,000 in this year. So is that a contradiction in those terms?
Okay, well, I'm surprised really that the question has come, because I specifically asked that Councillor Clark be briefed on this, because I know of his interest, and his interest has been a positive one in the main, and I've tried to carry forward the ideas and plans that he had under the previous administration. So I specifically asked that he be briefed on this, and I've been fed back by an officer that he's been briefed on this. So he's abreast of this just as much as I am. Clearly, at the moment, we're not going to spend that money to improve the conferencing facilities and the facilities for meetings when we just have no clear idea of when we will have large-scale meetings and conferences again. It is still our aim to spend that money. The plans that we had for this building haven't really changed since Councillor Clark was in charge of the portfolio. What has changed clearly is when we're going to do it, but it remains an ambition of this administration and a hope of the whole council. But clearly it should have been done over the summer. That was the original plan. We closed down our meetings in July, and that gives a good length of time for the builders to get in here. But we aren't going to spend all that money improving conferencing facilities, facilities for meetings of more than 6 people, presumably, when there's all the uncertainty that there is around. But do we want to spend that money on this building eventually? Yes, we do. So it will stay in the budget, but there will be a narrative, and I will continue to ask that Councillor Clark be kept up to speed on it.
Just going back on it, I think that the point I was making, it is the entrance. And to have another entrance for people actually using the facilities when they do become available. I appreciate that COVID has thrown things into turmoil, but to have another entrance there would enable us to optimise the facilities here by allowing people to come in through a different entrance. That's the only point I was going to make.
Okay, noted. Colin, anything else from anyone? Okay, Matthew, could you just do me a favour? Could you all also, obviously you were in front of the scrutiny committee on Monday as well, and the scrutiny committee had a couple of recommendations.
They did, which is part of the supplementary agenda that members should have had. I did present to scrutiny, just bear with me. Oh, where's it gone? Have you got a paper copy that you can read out to? Thank you. Oh, budget monitoring. Oh, I'm on the right page. I was on the right page all along, which is not something that people say about me very often. But the scrutiny committee's recommendations, which again, I'm hoping that cabinet colleagues will be happy to accept. The panel thanked the cabinet member and the Section 151 officer for their report and for answering the questions. They welcomed my commitment to review the level of earmarked reserves going forward, and they expressed their thanks for taking its previous feedback forward in providing greater narrative, and that referred to the capital programme.
So can I quickly, are we all in favour of accepting the recommendations from the scrutiny committee? That's unanimous, thank you. And then Matthew's obviously previously gone through the portfolio recommendations 2, 3, 4 and 5 as presented on page 189. It's a bit easier, isn't it? Matthew's proposed them. Do we have a seconder? Aniela's seconding that. Are we all in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, unfortunately, we're at the point where we need to exclude the press and public. Can I have a proposer, please? Thanks, Matthew, and a seconder. Cheers, Daniela. So I'll let the officers now have to go into